where the Secretary General is going to explain what we have gathered from our maiden congresses of women and youth. So we can start with a silent prayer in your faith, and then we start. Amen. So we are going to call the president of Pdois, Sidia Jata. So he's going to address before the Secretary General comes in. Uncle Sidia.
Good afternoon, everybody. This press conference is being called in the aftermath of two congresses which took place in Basse recently, Youth Congress and Women Congress. The objective of this press conference is precisely to give light to the population, you in particular who are here, about what has happened in Basse in relation to the two congresses that were held there, and what the party is about doing as from now, from that Congress. In other words, this Congress, this press conference will give you the new start that the party is about to make. You all know for the last 20-something years, the party, among others, was ceaselessly making efforts to see how best the former regime could be dislodged. We went into many types of coalitions in the process, and eventually in 2016, we succeeded in establishing a coalition which eventually dislodged the former regime. During that period, one would say that all the parties were frozen because the commitment was not a party politic at the time. The commitment was a national politic in the sense that what can be done nationally to get rid of a system that served as a fetter to the development of this country. And now that that work has been done, there is still new work to be done. That was just part of the work that was to be done. What was that work? That work amounted to what you call generally a regime change. But regime change is not what the Gambia needs. It's not the only thing the Gambia needs. The Gambia needs what we call here system change. And how that system change is going to be brought about depends on different perceptions of the different political parties that are in the country. Now, you are going to hear from us how we perceive that system change to be done in this country. And I don't want to seize the time because already we are late, but I'll now allow the Secretary General to come in for his presentation. Khalifa.
Members of the media, we're here to re-engage, to amplify voices that citizens must listen to before they can make informed choices. Democracy is about information. Without it, there can be no decision making. Many people claim that Pdois has an ideology and they attribute that ideology to many countries in the world. and they attribute success or failure to Pdois based on their notions. We met in Basse to begin a new journey, a journey that started many decades ago, but fundamentally with one objective: eradicating poverty, tyranny, and degradation in our homeland. And we made mutual commitment that unless that poverty is eradicated, that degradation, that tyranny, no matter how many seats we occupy in the National Assembly or even the highest office in the land, we would have failed in our quest. Those who continue to claim that the journey taking this long is not worth taking would definitely have to reconsider their view. If they do accept that poverty still remains, degradation still remains, lack of ownership of power still remains, then we will conclude that we are yet to reach our destination. And that is why we are before you today. Ideology, study of ideas, is not what anybody who truly understands the science of society would attribute to this or that group. Society embodies facts. Facts we have to study scientifically to understand before we can map out which direction society should take to be able to eradicate the poverty, degradation, and tyranny we sought to combat. You will hear people saying that Gambia is a private sector-led country. What are the facts? And this is what Pdois is all about. It speaks the language of facts. If you do your inquiry, like Pdois has, they will tell you your banking system, the net foreign assets of the banking system is about 9 billion. The domestic, about 22 billion. How much is going to the private sector? 28%. So where is the private sector that should generate employment for the youth to have employment? It does not exist. Pdois did not emerge to fight a private sector. Pdois emerged to eradicate poverty. And that is why we had to develop policies capable of addressing poverty. Today, we are convinced that the ideas we have is what constitute the system change that will change the trajectory in this country. And that is why we are here to share those ideas. We are convinced that an economy which depends entirely on importing everything that we are consuming, and look at the basis of the importation of rice alone, and you will see exactly what we are talking about. You look at what we are producing in terms of rice. 67,000 tons of rice is what we are producing, when we need as we are importing 200,000 tons. Currently, the bill on rice alone is over 2 billion. And we are capable of producing rice. It means that if we produce, the rice that we are importing will be putting 2 billion annually in the hands of our producers. This is the fact. But how do we enhance that production? That is the fundamental question of system. Some people are telling us that in other countries like the United States, few farmers are capable of producing all that the country needs in terms of wheat and grain. That is true. But if few farmers own all those plantations, where will the rest of society go? Can Gambia emulate that? That's the fundamental question. Could we allow just few people using tractors, machinery of the highest type, to own the rest of the land in order to produce the over 200,000 tons that currently we need? Over 140,000 tons that we end up importing. If we do that, where will the rest of the farmers go if we agree that over 70% of the population depends still on rural agriculture? That is the challenge. Do we give the land only to a few and they engage in large-scale production? Or do we have a system that will enable those farmers to continue to own their land and still enhance production? That is the question Pdois had to confront. And our answer is, we will ensure that those farmers retain their family farms and are still given the capacity to produce what is necessary for us to consume, so that the 2 billion will be in their hands. That is what Pdois policy is all about. How is that going to take place? That is the fundamental question. Bank, 9 billion, 22 billion in assets. They need to invest. These are commercial banks. We are saying commercial banks should invest in the private sector and build up the productive base of the economy and generate employment according to their capacity. But because their production is unpredictable, because you cannot force banks to invest where they will not gain profit, you will not be able to plan any economy based on those banks. That is why we are convinced that a state which this year had a budget of 28 billion in 1 year must begin to be a productive state. And that productive state must ensure that those farmers will have the resources they need to be able to produce on a large scale. We are saying, therefore, that there must be state-owned enterprises, and some of the people talk about Singapore. Go and read what is happening, what had happened in Singapore. Within 20 years after 1965, Singapore had a state sector with state-owned enterprises that facilitated the development of that country. We are saying that we need a cooperative bank where foreign banks may do whatever they want to do in terms of investments or foreign investors, but we must have a productive state with a cooperative bank where sovereign national wealth will be invested so that they will be able to give the fertilizer, the seed, the farming implement that the family farms need to cultivate the rice, the coos, whatever grain they need in order to be able to produce what we need. So in that respect, our country will begin to eradicate poverty. And the rural economy will be a cooperative economy, meaning that each village will have a consolidated fund for the village, just like the district, just like the region, just like the nation. And into that consolidated fund will be paid taxes from the village, but also with a developed productive base. Those people who are in that particular village will be able to contribute quotas for development. Development such as providing milling machines, providing certain simple implements, labor-saving devices that will prevent our people from continuing the type of drudgery that exists in all parts of our country, where you find women daily using 20 gallons to draw water 35 meters, 45 meters, more than that, daily from wells. How long will those people be able to survive? Such back-breaking task is what Pdois aim to eradicate. So we are convinced that with that cooperative economy, that plan, you'll be able to ensure each year what could be done to improve roads, hospitals, medicine, and all other things that may be needed. So in essence, what we are saying, what each village needs in terms of drugs will be calculated based on demand. What it needs in terms of water will be calculated. Everything that it needs in terms of services will be calculated. Then the village capacity will be examined. The district capacity will be examined. The national capacity will also contribute to district and village so that constantly the nation serves the villages and the villages will serve the people. This is what Pdois calls socialism. It's a cooperative economy where our collective wealth, and no one doubts that, we are the owners of the Gambia. That is why we have a republic. The land, the sea, the air belongs to us. So essentially all the wealth, whether it's terrestrial, whether it's marine, whether it's atmospheric, belongs to the Gambian people. The role of government is to be able to tap it and ensure that it serves the welfare of the people. That's what socialism is all about. We are therefore saying that under the current government, under the past two governments, there is the ocean with all the marine life. But what they have been doing is granting license to few companies to fish and take all the fisheries products away to process it and then send it back to our homeland. We become the consumers. We are saying that that system cannot sustain development. We are saying, therefore, that you must have a fisheries corporation that is public owned, that will invest resources to buy fishing vessels, trawlers, that will go out at sea, ensure that Gambians become captains, become sailors, fisher folks, work, sell it abroad, gain foreign exchange, process it on Gambian soil, generate employment. We are convinced that that is how our marine life can ensure employment for our citizens and eradicate poverty in our country. That is our policy. That is socialism. It's taking the productive public base, productive wealth of the state, and ensure that it serves the people entirely and consequently eradicate their poverty. You know and we know that minerals are available. Oil has been, prospecting has been done. But for how many years? What could be discovered could have been discovered. But because of neglect our resources are yet to be known, because prospecting has not been done with the efficiency and determination that it should have. We knew that under the previous regime, they were mining. Nobody knew what. And we raised questions in the National Assembly. It is recently that we are being told, but that another company is actually doing the mining and paying royalties. Where is the public corporation that is established to establish some form of partnership with whatever private corporation exists that may be bringing the machinery? You have to quantify the cost of that machinery, what part it plays in the mining, what shares you are supposed to give that company, which will be fair share, what is the national share, we the owners of what is being mined, and what share that our corporation should have. Therefore, in the mining process, annually, we can guarantee that this sum of money is going to be allocated to our consolidated fund, and that fund can be prescribed precisely to go into the cooperative bank to ensure the horticultural gardens will be given fertilizer, seeds, farming implements, so that they will produce the tomato we need, the onions we need, even to export all those horticultural products. This is the type of system that we are talking about. We call it socialism. We are importing tomato paste when we can produce it. We are importing milk when we can produce it. We are importing onions when we can produce it. Most of the products we are importing, we can produce. We have fruits, but do not have the drinks. We still import those drinks. We are saying it is that processing of our raw materials that will ensure value added, and that will generate employment, and that will generate foreign exchange, that will ensure import substitution. What you are importing, instead you will be exporting. That will enhance the quality or the value of your currency. This is how a state should function. And this is what Pdois intends to bring to the Gambia. And that is why we talk about system change, because what we are saying has not happened yesterday, and it's not happening now. And we have not seen any political party that has articulated precisely what we are articulating. And that is why the agenda that we have is the agenda that we are promoting to be the agenda that can eradicate the poverty of our people and enhance our development. In this respect, we have made commitment to the villages. And those commitments, I do not need to repeat, because we will hand over the documents to you for sharing. And we will be using these documents everywhere so that people will know exactly what we are promising the Gambian people. And through your questions, we'll also be able to answer, so that you know concretely what we are saying. We are ensuring that villages will no longer go through the drudgery of using what has always been used, pestles, in order to get what is flour. We'll ensure that all the villages will have labor-saving devices to eradicate the suffering of our people. Clean drinking water to eradicate the suffering of our people. Proper health centers to eradicate the suffering of our people. You can question us how we are going to do that. But we have shown you the cooperative economy, that you must have a productive base. You go to any village today, none of them even have a village council or a treasurer. It does not exist. So how will they develop? That's what Pdois intends to bring. And into that treasury, the villages will be able to have their own productive base. Land that is not being used by any family. The villages will get loans from the cooperative banks, to be able to work as a village on those farms, and the earning from those villages will go into the consolidated fund of the village. If it is a fishing village, aquaculture will be utilized, and the village will be given the funds that it needs by the cooperative to get all the means that it needs to use that the water to be able to produce the fish that they need, so that in that sense, what is earned will go into the consolidated fund of the village to provide water, to provide hospital, to provide nursery school, to provide the basic things that the villages do not have, and the state, from production of minerals, from oil that may be found, from this, the fishing that is done, all the sovereign national wealth will be utilized to ensure equalization grants, and through that equalization grants, you'll make sure that all those who are falling behind will actually move forward. Therefore, there will be proportional development of society. This is what we are talking about. Members of the press, we met in Basse to sum up Pdois' experience since 31st July 1986. We made a comparison that ANC was born in 1912. It managed to rule South Africa in 1994. Why? Because there was appetite, which had to be fought, leading to the incarceration of people like Nelson Mandela. Even though he was in prison, he was still seen as a symbol of national unity. Because there are tribes, still tribes, there are tribes in South Africa. So if you leave the society, and apartheid struggled to divide the South African people. And in that sense, if they were left, they would have never been liberated. Like ANC, Pdois realized that after 1994, Gambia had changed completely. The parties that had emerged of the First Republic were mainly banned, and they had to move into coalition building in order to try to survive. Even though they established the UDP coalition, they could not succeed by 2001, and they started to disintegrate. And because of the disintegration of that coalition, all of us know about the NCP separation from the coalition in 2001, and eventually the same for PPP, for NAM. So it started, the coalition started to shatter. And it is at that moment that Pdois started to show a trajectory that can maintain national unity, so that we can effect what has already been said by the chairperson. We can effect a change at the top, a change of government. The anticipation, as we have said in Basse, was that that change will be political. Political in the sense that those who effect the change will no longer consider their individual political parties. They will see the coalition as a national liberation movement. A national liberation movement comprises people from different sectors with different aims and different objectives. But they come together for a purpose. And that was the purpose that gave rise to Coalition 2016. A national liberation movement which eventually effected the change. Following that change, we needed to build the national instruments and institutions. That is why we saw the need for constitutional reform, for institutional reform, ensuring that there is justice which will be substantive justice and restorative justice, where people who have done wrong will admit what they have done, and society will see the wrong done, and those who have been victimized will see that what has been done to them has actually been admitted, and eventually leave them to decide whether they would want further reparation or whatever means to ensure that the wrong done to them is actually remedied. The conviction was that within a period of 3 years, that task would have been accomplished. And the country will move to its first phase of democratic existence since it became a republic. It was our conviction that by all parties accepting to work together as a national liberation movement to build the instrument, institution, and normative practices of our country, that we will build a country fit for purpose. And the Gambian people will become a conscious people who can never again be subjected to inducement or intimidation. They will vote to select their leaders based on the policies and programs put before them. It was anticipated that those who combined to establish the coalition would work together to build that nation and consequently can claim the victory of the period and will start on a level ground to seek the mandate of the people. We believe that that is the way we thought we could move to be able to consolidate democracy and give Gambia a new start. We've told the meeting in Basse that women would have made a new start because the constitutional transformation, as we Pdois fully support, that you should have 50-50 in all institutions of representation. But to move toward that process, you start with the 30% equalization on the basis of gender through proportional representation, and then move gradually before even the end of one term to the 50% margin in the next following election. That is the conviction. We could have achieved that. It will be a program to discuss how to eradicate discrimination against women. We've told the Congress that today, you go into the countryside, you find women who have difficulty in delivery, dying because of lack of facilities. Could we say that women are treated equally in the country? You find this woman pounding, you find it drawing water, the drudgery. Could you say that those women are being given fair treatment? We see the suffering of our people, but we ignore it and use statistics to show that progress is being made. We must look at the poverty, over 48%, the poverty, in order to reflect on what to do. We cannot talk about development as long as that poverty exists. We cannot continue to measure development because an arch has been built, a bridge has been built. That is not the way to measure development. The way you measure development is eradicating the poverty of our people. Yes, all other infrastructural development is important, but the most important form of development is providing that social security to our people. That is why the women in Basse made a commitment that we will move to consolidate our institutions, the women movement, and build it into a movement for system change, so that the economic base will change, the social base will change, the civil base will change, the cultural base will change, ecological base will change, international relation will change. That is what we talk about when we talk about system change. The same with the youth. We indicate that if you are under 18, you are considered a child. If you are above 18, you can get a voter's card at 18. But until you reach 21, you cannot stand for election. So we can talk to that youth to prepare for leadership. But you cannot say that the youth between 18 and 21 could be a councillor or could be a National Assembly member. One must help that youth to fully understand the role of the National Assembly, understand the role of the council, understand the role of the executive, the role of those who represent us, and prepare to learn, to gain leadership qualities in order to prepare oneself to assume responsibility of the state. Because all of us are sovereign, we all have a right to stand for election, have a right to vote. Some will become representatives. All will not become representatives, but they are the makers of representatives. So that is the lesson that should be taught in our school system. As the person assumes the right to vote, that person will know exactly how to vote. At the age of 21, if the person has the competence, seek the mandate to be a councillor, seek the mandate to be a National Assembly member. But under the current situation, unless you are 30 years, even if you are above 18 to 21, and from 21, you can be a National Assembly member, but up to 30, you cannot be a president. So even though the person can say, yes, I'm a youth, I can lead a society, but because of that age bracket, that person will not be able to be a president of a republic, which means that from 21 to 29, the person must work very hard to prepare oneself for leadership. So by 30, the person was fully prepared to handle any responsibility in society. Therefore, by that bracket, society, through our school systems, through political parties educating their membership, through citizens being educated, you come to a point where you continue to lower the age of those who are competent to be able to carry out any responsibility in life. We will say then, we told the youth, that at the age of 30, you have gone beyond the age of a youth. 18 below, children. 18 to 29, youth. 30, you are there to save society. It is your duty as a voter to save society. It's your duty as a leader to save society. Compete for it. So the dexterity of your mind, this dexterity of your principles, have the clarity, have the sincerity, develop the competence to win trust and take charge and lead. That is the message that Pdois gave in Basse to the Pdois youth and to the youth of the nation and the children of the nation. We left Basse fully prepared to prepare the party for system change and to prepare the country for system change. All the institutions of the party are now charged. The political bureau is charged. It has responsibility to provide the political literature that will help build citizenship education, membership education, leadership education. We have prepared the documents as a start, and we'll be producing the party magazine called Gonga, which is Truth, and all this information will be there embedded for general circulation, not only to the party membership, but anybody who is interested in gaining clarity as to how to change this country so that it serves the interests of the people. The political bureau will continue to build a library where people can come and seek information. It will conduct research continuously to give correct information to the population. The Information Bureau is building its base to serve as the organ that will be responsible for the actual production of Gongo and information dissemination. And we'll be amassing young people who are really interested in gathering information, in deciphering it, in transforming it into knowledge, in transforming it into a way of life, so that the information we receive will not just remain information for its sake. It will be digested information into knowledge that can guide practice, so that we will change the destiny of the land. So that whole policy of IKC, information into knowledge, knowledge into culture, way of life, will be the principal directive policy of the Information Bureau. We have ensured that the Youth Bureau will be consolidated, activated, the same thing Women's Bureau, so Organizing Bureau, all the organs will give you the information, you will read it for yourself, you will have questions, and will be able to answer it at a subsequent press conference, so that constantly we feed you with what we are doing, and you can question everything that we promise, to see whether what we are saying is actually the thing that goes with our practice. We are therefore ready as a party to start the new journey towards system change. Our institutions are to operate immediately. A registration of all youth in the party will be consolidated, and all new members who may wish to join the party. The same thing with the Women's Bureau. All the institutions are now charged. Their committees are set up in all the regions. They'll be working with those committees, and the bureaus in all the regions will be open with their coordinators, so that the groundwork at the village level will continue to be enhanced. And we are convinced that as partners in the development process, our colleagues in the opposition, our colleagues who are also, I call them opposition at the moment, because you can see the trend in all the parties now. Each is preparing itself for one way or the other. None is classifying itself as a ruling party. So let's see that then all these parties, one way or the other, is moving towards the direction of preparing for an alternative plan for the country. So we are calling on all those who have an alternative plan, and all those who want to be independent executives, because currently we have an independent executive that has actually expressed its interest in staying. So you can have independent executives. Whether independent executive or party representative, we are calling on all to be ready for a new Gambia, a Gambia of debates, a Gambia of productive discourse, a Gambia of giving concrete solutions to concrete problems. A Gambia where political parties or the independent aspirants would be able to come and debate issues and leave the Gambian population to decide who should manage their affairs. That is the journey we have started, and we are calling on all to join us in that journey towards building a new citizen who will be able to bring about the new Gambia. As the person given the responsibility to convey the views of Pdois, my concluding remark is simply this: that we cannot have a new Gambia without a new Gambia. If you demand for a new Gambia, ask yourself whether you are a new Gambian. If you are not a new Gambian, then you have no moral authority to demand for a new Gambian. That is the bottom line. Once we become a new Gambian, we will have a new Gambia. Who is that new Gambian? It is that Gambian who is conscious that he or she is an embodiment of the sovereignty of the land. It is that Gambian who is conscious that no other Gambian is embodied with a higher degree of sovereignty that he or she is embodied. It's a new Gambian who is conscious that he or she is equal in sovereignty with all other Gambians, irrespective of gender, irrespective of religion, irrespective of ethno-linguistic origin, irrespective of birth, irrespective of any other physical features in terms of certain differences in physical features, like somebody with eye problem, etc. We are saying that that conscious Gambian will be conscious of being part of a nation, united with everybody, and seeking to ensure that each lives for all and all lives for each. That is the Gambian who can bring about a new Gambia. We have said, and before the questions are asked, that what happened in 2016 should have prepared us for that new Gambia. But we have lost that battle. Emphasis, we have lost the battle. Because what we conceived in 2016 was a form of national liberation movement, 3-year term. When we met, and we continue to emphasize, if Halifa Sallah, who called the first meeting at Kairaba of presidential candidates, so that we can prepare the ground to have only one of us to be the presidential candidate for our coalition. If that Halifa Sallah had told those people, select me to be your presidential candidate, they would have left him there and there would have been no coalition. If anybody who responded to that invitation came and said that select me for 5 years and then I will also stay after the 5 years, Halifa Sallah would not have been left there sitting. And he doubts very seriously whether anybody would have been left there sitting. And there would not have been any coalition, and there would have been still Jammeh's administration in the Gambia. So we developed a tactic, and that should be heard loud and clear, a tactic so that we can unite. And those who disagree with that tactic then should not claim ownership of the change, because it is that tactic that brought about the change. Don't separate the change from the tactic. That is not honesty. The tactic was to ensure that none of us is interested in self-perpetuating rule. Therefore, we put it in an agreement that the person will be there for 3 years. Section 65 of the Constitution provides for the resignation of a president. It is wrong to say that the coalition partners did not know the Constitution, otherwise they would not have said 3 years. Read Section 65, or do you want me to read it for you? If you have any question, question it, and I'll bring the Constitution and read it for you. It says that any person who is president, that presidency will become vacant upon the resignation of the president or upon the death of the president. If a constitution says 5 years, if you die before the 5 years, will you still remain to be president? Constitution must provide for resignation, must provide for death, it must provide for vacancy. And it does. And we realize that. That is why we said the person who will be there for 3 years. Why? Because that endeared the person to the electorate. After 22 years of self-perpetuating rule of the Second Republic and 30 years of self-perpetuating rule of the First Republic. This would have been an nene major. That is the reason. It will endear the country to its people and to the world. That was the objective. And the whole objective of saying that the person will not contest in the next election is to eradicate incumbency. Everywhere in the world, incumbency is the first way of rigging elections, because it puts you to an advantage. So we say, let's get rid of the advantage. Let's get rid of incumbency. The person will not stand in the next following election. To move further, we say the person will not support any other party after that in the next following election, to ensure that there is real democracy, that there is level ground for multi-party contest. And Gambia opposition for electoral reform, which we constituted before Jammeh left, go and read our demands on Jammeh. It was level ground for multi-party contest. We demanded it from Jammeh. What about us who made the demand? We also included that under the current constitution, if the office of president becomes vacant, the vice president will serve the rest of the term. If the office of vice president is also vacant, the Speaker of the National Assembly will serve the rest of the term. So if we had a plot, then I think we would have demanded that we'll be made vice president, that is the Pdois people. We'll demand that make us vice president. If not the vice president, we'll demand make us speaker. I want all honest Gambians now to tell me, if I really sincerely wanted to be Speaker of the National Assembly, and I go to President Barrow, who was working very closely with me, that make me Speaker of the National Assembly, I sincerely believe that he will make me Speaker of the National Assembly. Even if he doesn't make me Vice President, I think he will make me Speaker of the National Assembly. So where is the greed? Where is the hunger for power? Where is the hunger for position? Everything was done with sincerity and unanimity. Unanimity. Not consensus. No dissent. My God. Where in the world have you ever seen that? That has never happened anywhere. That is why Gambia was endeared to the world. Gambia became an example of the world. So in essence, if now people are demanding from us that we should speak out, what do you want us to say? To speak with anger? When you, the people, who are now demanding that we should speak out, when the coalition was being dismantled, we said, let's work together in cabinet. Those can go to the National Assembly, all independent National Assembly members. Let's have an independent country. No party will emerge because we are on a level ground. After, let's all work together. But others said, no, they don't want parties to die. What did you say at that time? How did you vote? What was your position? Why didn't you claim at that time that this will dismantle the coalition? Let's work together. This is what we voted for. Where? I dare not say where is it? Otherwise. But sometimes the question worth asking. So you allow everything to be dismantled until you reach a situation now where even if you demand for the person to leave after 3 years, the vice president will serve the rest of the term. Is that what we fought for? So we are telling you that's not our agenda. We cannot speak on that. What we can speak on is our agenda was for President Barrow to serve 3 years. We are still telling President Barrow that is what is best for you. But if that President Barrow says, I want to serve the 5-year term of the Constitution, what can we do about that? So this is a moral issue. Because constitutionally, the provision is there to be 5 years. The provision is there to resign before 5 years. That's why we said the choice is his, not us. And people should not continue to demand that we should speak. Because the next language we are going to use is to indict people. And you will feel we are angry when we are not. Now we want to be pacified. We want to be calm. We want to go back to our old selves. We don't want to continue to argue with people, insult people. We don't want to question people's integrity. UDP leaders, all these leaders, they have a right to be who they are. It's not our business. You are the ones who must choose leaders. People have their own personalities. They have their own ambitions. That's them. That's not our prerogative. What is important is tell us how you want to build a nation. It is different from ours. We argue. We debate. We show that ours is more profound. That's what we know about. And that is what we now stand for, and we are going to proceed on that trend. And anybody who does not want to move on that trend, then you are not on the path of Pdois. Move to the path. We are all citizens. We have a right to freedom of association and freedom of expression. Those who speak the same language and associate for the same purpose should continue to do so. We are associated to eradicate poverty, tyranny, and degradation. We are united to ensure that our people live in prosperity, dignity, and liberty. That's why we assemble. And forever we will assemble until we get to our graves. That's what we stand for. Thank you very much.
Now it's up to the press to come and ask your questions. Yes, come and announce your name.
My first question. As self-proclaimed last month, 2 young people were allegedly killed. We saw your presence in the aftermath trying to calm the situation down. But what is your party position on this, on the national security of the Gambia right now? What is your party's take on that? And secondly, your party's take on the release of the junglers into the society. What is your party's take on these points?
The objective of Pdois is very clear in its program. And if you look at the whole agenda of the coalition, you will see Pdois ever present in it. And the agenda was to build human rights and ensure that there is no recurrence. That has been the agenda of the coalition. And if you see the civil pillar of Pdois, which we will give you, so that you know that we are not inventing, we've emphasized that Pdois stands for a society where there will be no violation of human rights. And how do we ensure it? We are saying that religious leaders, members of civil society organizations, members of other groupings that are considered to be traditional leaders, all of them, under the act that we'll create, will be human rights commissioners who will have a right, not only a human rights commission, National Human Rights Commission, but human rights commissioners who will have a right to visit any police station, any institution of detention at any time, and be able to really make a petition to show the wrong that is being done. We are talking about institutionalization to prevent violation of human rights. Not only that, we have also emphasized the establishment of a new state. That's where the system change comes. That is a state that is no longer an instrument of coercion, but an instrument of protection. So it means that from the level of the training schools, we are going to begin to train people to see that they are protecting the sovereign Gambian people. That sovereignty resides in the people. So protecting people is protecting the sovereign people. So from the training that they will be given, it will show them that they are there to protect and not to coerce. So the institutions are going to fundamentally change on the day that you will not have instruments of coercion. And those who are going to be trained will be so mature that nobody can use them, against somebody else. So in short, I must again go back and emphasize that there was a time when you had an impasse here. And during that impasse, there were forces everywhere, sandbags everywhere. So it's not the number of sandbags, the number of military forces in the street that will ultimately lead to the taking of life. It's the policies that guide what they do. And you must admit that up to the time Jammeh left, we, as a coalition, were on course. And when he left, nobody heard that anybody was killed, any property was looted, but the same people were here. What happened? That power changed in a very peaceful manner, and tens of thousands of people were able to go and welcome President Barrow. Some were still in the airport when he reached home. What was responsible for that? And that's what Gambians should begin to discover. So I must say that we denounce every killing. We call for authorities to carry out, I'm sure you must have followed that, to carry out inquests of all sorts to ensure that the truth is known and that the wrong thing is actually addressed and recurrence should be prevented. That is our policy. You've mentioned junglers. Well, I wonder sometimes whether we all operate on the basis of the same principles. And unless we operate on the basis of the same principles, then we will never see eye to eye. When we came to office, before government was constituted for President Barrow to actually assume office, we agreed that there will be truth and reconciliation. Now, look at what the commission says. You have the objectives of the commission. The commission shall initiate and coordinate investigations into violations and abuse of human rights, the nature, causes, and extent of violations and abuses of human rights, including the antecedents, circumstances, factors, contexts, motives, and perspectives which led to such violations and abuses. The identity of all persons, authorities, institutions, and organizations involved in such violations. The question whether such violations were the result of deliberate planning on the part of the state, its organs, or other groups, or an individual. The gathering of information and the receiving of evidence from any person which established the identity of victims of such violations, their faith or present whereabouts, and the nature and extent of the harm suffered by such victims, and on and on. Now, what powers do they have? Look at power 1I. It says identification and recommendation for prosecution of persons who bear the greatest responsibility for human rights violations and abuses. These are all the powers of the commission. So it goes further and said, what should the commission do at the end? The commission at the end must provide a report. The commission will provide a report. The commission shall submit a report, that is 2029, submit a report of its work to the president at the end of its operation. The report will be published. And the report will include measures aimed at reconciliation, peace building, individual and collective reparation of victims, and recommendations of all sorts. So this is what we've agreed. The commission is doing its work. Who should interfere in this work? Not an attorney general, not a president, not a media. Nobody should interfere with its work. They should be allowed to gather all the facts and make their recommendations. And the recommendation is not only sent to the president is duty-bound to, within 30 days, to send this report to the National Assembly, to send this report to the United Nations Secretary General. So it means that you have the highest organs in the world being involved. So who can escape justice? Who on earth can escape this justice? So therefore, Gambians should be calm, leave the commission to do its work, and finally find out what the end result is, and then pass judgment on the end result. That is what should happen.
My last question was challenging the current government, your role. I know you
it's not, yes, we have said the fact that we have produced all these documents and we are telling you the weaknesses of the current government. You've seen it in terms of fisheries, in terms of mining, in terms of housing. Look at the situation. We are saying you have a social security. Social security, how many years? How many billions invested in that institution? But look at Banjul. Look at KMC. Look at the villages. What type of housing do we have? You go to Europe, UK, even councils have flats. What are they using to have the flats? Public money. We are saying public money is there. That institution, rather than going to build a hotel, should have been building, just go to Banjul, all the rotten, wherever you find rotten streets and compound. What stops you from engaging into contract with those people? That we want to develop this place. This is the cost of your home. Afterwards, we'll exchange that in terms of apartments. What stops anybody from engaging in such developmental strategies? And wouldn't we change the whole complexion of our cities by simply ensuring that you have that type of institution with the resources that are necessary? All the workers who are working there, most of them do not have, they are renting. You could have built all this low-cost housing, and annually they will pay. Monthly they will pay. And they would have owned the apartments afterwards. That's what we are saying. We are saying First Republic, Second Republic, Barra's government, the system change we are talking about, that's not the type of system that they have. I don't know what can be more fundamental than that. We are saying we have an alternative system, and we are now going to propagate that system.
So yes,
we have not read to know exactly what type of Gambia after Barrow's departure. I don't know, maybe if you have the idea, you can tell me. But we, at the moment, as Pdois, we do not have any indication of what this program is all about. But the program we subscribe to is a program where President Barrow would leave after 3 years, but we would have injected in the Constitution. Section 65 would have been amended. It's not an entrenched clause, where what was in the 1970 Constitution would have been imported into the Constitution. And clearly, we as opposition under Jammeh, what we call Gambia Opposition for Electoral Reform, we, under our demand, made that demand from Jammeh. And therefore, we would have expected that what will be in the Constitution is that after the office of president becomes vacant, within 90 days, you'll have election to the office of president. But in the absence of that, we don't know about some other people's agenda. That was our agenda. It has not happened. And we are saying with that agenda, it is the pioneering role would have to be President Barrow, because unless we want to overthrow a government, unless we want unconstitutional change of government, and I'm sure that we will not be a political party if we advocate for unconstitutional change of government. Go and read Section 60 of the Constitution. So in essence, we have to be a constitutional party, meaning we have to support constitutional means of government. We are saying, therefore, the 3 years is still in the hands of President Barrow. It's a question of moral integrity. He has constitutional powers to stay for 5 years. He has constitutional powers to resign before 5 years. So the bread and the knife is in his hands. What he does with it is left to him. And that's what we'll do afterwards. That's our position.
Half of our farmers depend on rainwater. With the alternative that you have, do you think it is achievable for us to mechanize our agriculture?
Well, what is important is to know that agriculture just depends on water. Whether it's groundwater, whether it's river water, whether it's rain-fed water, it depends on water. And you are digging boreholes, you are seeing streams. So in essence, the whole Nyanija area, we are told, is enough to feed the whole country in terms of rice production. So to us, the problem is not the productive force of the human being who should work. The problem is having the means to put that person to work, fertilizers, seeds, farming implements, building of causeways, finding different ways of working with nature to ensure that they reach the farms, processing it afterwards. Utilize the New Deal as cooperative model of development. Even farmers were being subsidized so that they will produce less. Big farmers who were producing more, but they could not sell it because of a depression. It was not being bought. And prices started to fall. If the market is flooded, the prices will start to fall. To ensure that the prices do not fall, to wipe out the whole market, they start paying some farmers not to produce. They subsidize the farmers. Plus, cooperative venture is the state giving funds to people so that you facilitate production. The same thing with Singapore. The productive base of the state utilized to assist. The same thing with China. Different models. If you go to the Scandinavian countries, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, these are the models of development that you see everywhere. Some will tax the rich excessively so that they can maintain welfare systems. So there has always been ways and means of eradicating poverty, because if you keep the people poor, they will rise up against you. So that is why no government anywhere in the world could ever survive without coming back and addressing the issue of poverty. And we are giving you the way to address it. And if you doubt it, well, tell us it's not workable. But we believe that the cooperative banking system must come to the service of our family farms in order to ensure that we harness our horticultural potential as well as other agricultural potential to ensure food self-sufficiency. That is our policy.
We have gathered 1,500 voter registration cards from every region to be able to register a political party, and I have a follow-up.
You had a preamble that the coalition has been dismantled. That does not have any question.
No, that don't have.
It's just a comment that you are mentioning. Okay. Yes, yes, you have to have 10,000 registered voters. But I am telling you that we need already the Elections Act is being reviewed. And I believe we have a position that we have actually mentioned. And freedom of association, freedom of assembly is guaranteed under Section 25 of the Constitution. Every Gambian citizen has a right to freedom of assembly, including political assembly. So in our view, this right of the citizen should not in any way be tampered with. So any form of rule that weakens that right is really, to me, should be amended. Putting fees that are so exorbitant or numbers that are so exorbitant clearly, to me, would not be promoting democracy. So I am opposed to that. And I would urge you to read our own position, because at the Congress we issued a document and we'll issue it, a document on electoral reform, and we are showing our opposition to that.
The president's political affiliation. Our current president, did he have a political party, or is he affiliated to our political party?
Yeah, you see, the Constitution provided for the registration of political parties, and they are registered under the Elections Act. Before, you needed only 500 people to register a political party. In 2015, Jammeh changed that and increased the registration to 1,010,000 registered voters. He was making it impossible for people to establish political parties. So that is how the issue came. Now, the issue of independent candidates, since nobody, Section 26 of the Constitution, provides for that all Gambians have the right to stand for election and to vote, and that this right should not be unreasonably denied. So it means that there is a provision where you have, in the Elections Act, where you can have independent candidate contesting elections. And when the coalition came to fruition, in order to make the president neutral, that is why we all agree that the president will stand as an independent candidate. Resigned from his party to become an independent candidate.
So right now, he did not accumulate that 10,000 votes to be able to register.
No, independent candidates do not need to accumulate 10,000 votes. And I'm saying that read our recommendation. That is one argument that we have used in our analysis for electoral reform. That what will happen is that rather than forming political parties, many people will be driven to become independent candidates, because you don't need, to go and register and get all these things. So it's not rational.
Give chance.
System change. I had an interview with Honorable Swami Fui, who alluded that Gambians may not be literate enough to vote with ballot papers. Yeah? What is Pdois' position on the IEC's decision to use ballot papers as opposed to marble tokens? And my next question is, at a point when the coalition talks were being revived, Pdois released a presser distancing themselves from coalition dialogue. I've heard your explanations, which I respect. But my question is a simple one. Is dialogue no longer an option when it comes to coalition talks? Is that no longer an option for Pdois?
Yeah, for your first question,
Ballot.
it is important when somebody says challenges and policy must be distinguished. So when you raise a question, you should raise a question about policy. And every Pdois member will tell you that we favor the paper ballot than the marble. But no one doubts that it is a challenge. We, as United Front, use paper to vote to select a presidential candidate. So essentially, whatever practice, and Senegal has the same type of demographic characteristics as the Gambia. The same type of people, same literacy level. What do they use? They use ballot. So essentially, this is a culture that you must, whatever you bring, you must educate people, you must sensitize people, you must convince people. And simply that. We don't think that we lack the capacity to educate once the IEC agrees and then the National Assembly agrees to have paper ballot. I'm sure that as a nation we'll be able to educate each other to be able to do so, like all other people. Now, in terms of coalition talks, what was happening was not coalition dialogue. Please. Coalition members were called not to talk about what happened in the past and how to remedy it. They are called for what purpose? I will put that to you to go and ask those who called for the coalition talks, as you said. But Pdois distanced itself because Pdois is convinced that coalition agreement was a 3-year term and that President Barrow is the only one who should decide on that matter. So why do we meet somebody else to influence President Barrow in any way to make a decision that he should make for himself, especially after he has removed people from offices, etc. So in essence, really, President Barrow was the executive president. If you could influence him, then he will not dismiss ministers and remove them from offices. So really, we did not see any worth in participating in that discussion. Dialogue is a permanent feature of politics. And when issues are relevant, we will sit down with anybody to engage in dialogue. That's permanent. You cannot have politics without continuous dialogue. But it depends on the essence of the dialogue.
So if Barrow was to come, if President Barrow was to say, here I am going to call this coalition talks with fellow coalition members, will that be one that Pdois will then attend?
President Barrow is free anytime to call Pdois, any representatives or Pdois, and say, I want to talk to you. But we cannot in any way get into an issue where all the mechanisms of making what we wanted to happen had already been nullified. That's what we are saying. I've given you scientifically the reasons why we talked about 3 years. That has been nullified. And to this day, the Constitution has not been amended to provide for 90 days election. So if you go to talk, what are you going to talk about? Are you going to tell him that leave and somebody else serve the rest of your term? So he can invite us, any individual or the party, and say, I want to talk to you. Then we discuss about anything he wants to discuss about, because he is a head of state. But we are not in the preparation of talking about what has already been nullified.